Hi, I'm Denise,
And I'm Tom.
and welcome to our podcast, Because We've Been in Your Shoes.
We created our podcast for you, our nonprofit colleagues. As nonprofit professionals with over 50 years of experience combined, we've led nonprofit hospitals, university programs, campaigns that have transformed cities, communities, and campuses. We're from Chicago and Detroit, and now we're in the Pacific Northwest. Our work has taken us across the country from the Midwest to Seattle, to Portland, California, and nationally. We've seen it, lived it, and have learned from it.
We've all been through a lot as nonprofit professionals, and we hear you, we see you, and we understand. We know you, too, are used to wearing many hats. It can be exhausting, but we come together with the shared mission to transform the world. Because We've Been in Your Shoes is a podcast for you, us, and our entire nonprofit community, sharing and learning from one another so we can continue to innovate and unleash capacity for good. We'll hear from colleagues and peers, discuss emerging issues in the sector, and provide you with key takeaways and useful tips to support you in all you do. We believe that people and philanthropy equal possibilities. Join us on the Because We've Been in Your Shoes podcast with new topics and special guests.
Yes, how are you today? And before I even say this, I want to let the audience know today is Saturday. And I'm saying that right now because it's going to relate to the things we're talking about. So today is Saturday, everyone. And it is, what time is it? It's 10:46 in the morning. Yes.
Yes, it is. Thanks
Yes.
for asking. I'm pretty good, Tom. Yeah, it's been a busy week, but happy that it's Saturday and looking forward to talking to you. How are you?
I am doing well. I'm feeling very content today, and I'll share with you why I'm feeling content as we go throughout our chat today.
Perfect. Why are you content?
Oh, one of our topics today will be boundaries, taking care of ourselves, health, right? Mental health, physical health, emotional health. And there are a couple of friends and I, and we meet up or we share. We will ask each other a certain question every week. How are you doing today? How is your mental health? How are you taking care of yourself? Another question could be, what are you thinking about doing this weekend? And so a friend of mine then sent this one great thing about this emotional umbrella thing. And within the
Mm-hmm.
umbrella, there's the word happy, and it broke it down to what happy means to certain people. It could be thankfulness, trusting, content, very comfortable. It could be excited, relieved. Maybe you have confidence in something that you've done or confidence in yourself. All those things are happiness on this theory. So for me, I'm feeling very content, which makes me happy. Why? Well, it's Saturday. I love weekends where I don't have any schedule. I could just get up and do what I want to do. And definitely today is one of those days. So this morning, I got up, went and got some coffee, came back to my place, ate something very fatty, bacon, which I love bacon. Uh, and then, Dinez, I was so excited. I looked at my calendar. I'm like, oh, that's right. You and I are meeting today. That made me excited. It made me happy. And it made me even more content. So I'm feeling very content.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I woke up excited to have this conversation with you. And while we're talking about what we do for a living and what we've done throughout our lives professionally, having a chance to connect with a colleague and sharing is really also a place of contentment for me. So, plus it's shining here in the Northwest,
Mm.
sunny. Um, and so that also is another reason why I think I'm content. I actually have sun hitting my plants. And so my plants, I think, are happy too. So,
Nice. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, we're both happy people right now. And again, you know what? Something it took a while for me to realize the sun. I love the rain and the cloud and the fogginess. I love the Pacific
me
Northwest,
too.
right? Partly that's because I think for me, and maybe for you too, it chills me out. It keeps me calm. So I like that. But what I've come to realize when the sun is out, people generally are just happier. Never really picked up on that until I moved here. And that happiness that people are feeling, that excitement, it rolls over to me, which again, I never picked up.
Yeah, I definitely, when the sun does come out here in the Northwest, for those who are not familiar with this part of the country, we tend to have, I would say, 9 to 10 months of rain, a lot of heavy rain, sprinkled with some days of snow, but largely rain. And when the sun does come out, I think we cherish being in the outdoors, although many of us do go out in the rain, because if you want to experience the world around you here, you still have to go out in the rain. But the sun does, I think, it's that vitamin D and also the change of season. I think it's a renewal and it's a sign of something possible, and the potential for something is new life is growing. Trees are coming back to full bloom with flowers and everything. And I think that also contributes to the environment up here when you see the sun, because you know that that's coming. And
Mm.
then I think professionally that might also inspire. At least it inspires me creatively with work in the field that we do.
I love what you said, that last part, but also you said something else. The sign for something new when that sun is out.
Hmm.
Go into a little deeper what that means to you. Sign for something new.
Maybe, dusting off those great ideas you had, when you're doing some spring cleaning, getting those to the surface and seeing how you can revisit them. I think when we talk about New Year's resolutions, it's usually up here, it's dark, another rainy week, another rainy day. And so sometimes the environment doesn't really support your um, energy to be creative. And I think for me, it's like, well, why don't I revisit some of those ideas I had about the resolution? And maybe my resolution starts with the spring and the summertime here. And so that's kind of how I see it. I don't feel like I failed at my resolutions. I definitely feel it's an opportunity to maybe revisit them and see if I can chip away at one of them at least. But that's how I see it.
I love that. I love also where you said you don't feel like you fail. And I'll tell you, it reminded me of something else of what I do. On my birthday, I usually make a list of those actions I want to do. So I turned 55 in October. So I made a list of 55 things I want to accomplish this year. Right. And some of it is just
That's
fun. Some of it,
awesome.
yeah, I do it
And
every
happy
year.
birthday.
Thank you very much. With the list, though, I started doing this list in 40. I just want to let sure that everyone knows I don't follow through. Like, I can't do all everything. It's a guide, and I don't get upset if I don't accomplish it because it's just a guide. I will always strive to do all those things on the list, and I will modify. But you know what? It's just a guide. As you and I have spoken before, saying yes to adventure is the reason why I do this list. And I try and I make sure that I do not get upset if I can't accomplish everything. One fun thing I'll say, which is one when I turned 40, one of my on my list was 40 shots. I'm going to do 40 shots that year with a friend. A friend will come and recommend a shot to me, a new shot that I've never had. And that will, that was in 2007, I think. So 40 shots. One of my other friends, like,
Not
"You do
in one
40
evening.
shots?" What? A couple of friends did think that you can try to do 40 shots in a day or a week. I'm like, come on, you survive.
Well, with what we do for a living, you probably need 40 shots going to a big campaign or, or a huge fundraising event. But that's awesome
Right.
that you set those goals. Why do you set
Yeah.
those goals? Is it because is it, yeah, why do you set those goals?
Yeah. When I turned 40, I thought to myself, I wanted to force myself out of what I would consider to be very conservative things that I do, very safe things I do.
Oh,
So I remember that
yeah.
year. So I have a tattoo of the phoenix on my arm. The phoenix, as you mentioned
Awesome.
about, yeah, and it's a symbol of rebirth. You talked about all those things,
Yeah.
spring and what it means to you. So one of those things for the first time, I'm like, I'm going to do a tattoo. I would never have done that, a tattoo, And so I made a list of those things I wanted to force myself to get out of my comfort zone. So one was a tattoo. On my list was to learn to play the guitar. That's been on my list every single year, everyone.
Same, me too. Ever since for me too.
Yeah.
I do have an electric red guitar, a Fender. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
Mustang,
Oh yeah.
by the way.
And there are other things like I want to run 40 miles in a month. That's not bad. 40 miles in a month. That's when I turn right. It would be broken up by how many
That's
days.
awesome. Yeah.
So I do things like that.
Well, that's 10 miles a week.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that didn't happen. Well, not
You have time for that?
10 miles a week is not bad. When you think about it, I was actually
No,
running.
it's not.
Yeah, I was
I used
actually
to
running.
run.
Yeah, 1 to 3 miles every other day. You can accomplish that.
Yeah,
So
I
maybe.
used to run 3 to 5 miles a
Yeah,
day.
exactly. So I probably did it. There were other silliness. Reading, I remember I would do things like reading 4 books. So I used the number 4 or 40.
Oh,
And sometimes I just did the one thing. I'm just going to do one thing, and that's just it. So
that's
it
a
was,
great way.
yeah. So it wasn't, again, it
Yeah.
wasn't to stress me out. It was to help guide me to do something that
Mhm.
was different and new and adventurous, saying yes to adventure. So that's,
I love your yes to adventure.
thank you.
Speaking of adventure, because we've been in your shoes, we also, just want to acknowledge that, I think our shoes also in the moment and the experience we have, and the personalities that come with shoes.
That's right.
So I'm gonna ask you, what shoe are you wearing today? We talked about you being content and happy in spring and renewal. So what shoes are you wearing today?
Actually, I am not wearing any shoes. I'm barefoot today. I'm sitting in my place.
Oh, awesome.
I'm just walking around, just, it's one of those sense of like, do whatever I want to do. And I'm walking around, not that in my apartment, I walk around with shoes anyway, but yeah. So today when I go out for a run, I probably will put on my tennis running shoes, of course, or it may
Yeah,
just be a walk. And
yeah.
the running shoes, the walking shoes signify a couple of things for me. It is getting out, doing a movement, but it's also adventure time for me because
Yeah.
signals in my brain that I want to get out and do a long walk or run. And as I'm doing my walk, I tend to take a different path and look around the neighborhood. I look for restaurants.
Nice.
I take pictures of things that are going on. So today, for definitely the shoes signal for me today is to get out and be adventurous. So thanks for
Yeah.
asking the
I
question.
love that, especially, inspiring too, because those shoes might take you far on your adventure
Yep. Yep.
to
Okay.
inspire
So
you.
tell me what shoe you're wearing today.
I am wearing, Merkenstocks, Birkenstocks, and I've had them for quite a few years. I think I've always been wearing Birkenstocks from in high school, even through the '80s. Birkenstocks, just because was happy to talk to you and have this conversation. B, because it is a Saturday, so I'm comfortable. I'm in my own home and I feel at ease. And also, just I feel connected more to the environment. I've been thinking about the environment and our planet more so, and environmental organizations really trying to lead efforts around climate change, and creating a better world for, especially for my daughters. But that's, I think, maybe the Birkenstocks, I know, kind of the earthy, but I think that's the mood I'm in. And so it's kind of making me feel tied into, more closer to the earth.
I like that. I like that. Now, eventually, so folks, you all know this out in the audience that the in your shoe and how we relate that to our work, our experience. So we want to share those experiences. So one of the things that then
Definitely.
came up with, you came up with this idea of like, yeah, it's in your shoe. We're in each other's shoes. We're learning from each other. But sometimes the physical shoe relates to the work we're doing. I remember you shared this one story about you were at an event or something, you were wearing these high heel shoes and it relates to the event and how you feel in the work you were doing. Do you remember
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Wearing, I am quite petite and I gravitate towards heels in environments where I, either hosting, connecting, and building relationships. It feels empowering for me to wear those heels, especially when I am below average height. And so just having those shoes enable me to feel empowered to share my voice, be a part of conversations, and actually feeling comfortable going up to strangers, and introducing them into the organization. So, certain shoes that I've worn, especially heels or wedges, are give me that height and confidence and contribute to my, I think, ability to feel, ready to do my work.
I love that you shared that and you feel so openness you can share with the audience. Now, tell you why. I read years ago stories of when people would wear shoes and or something, some clothing. Maybe it could be a ring that represented their family or something of that nature, and it gave them the confidence. But what I like about what you just said, and what maybe other people are thinking, when you put on clothes that are very intentional to a situation, or maybe the way you need to feel, maybe you're going to do a presentation that does give you pride. It does give you confidence,
Oh,
right? So I think it's that intentional thinking about what you're wearing today. So thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I to link it up to what you're saying too, I'm just thinking of this, nonprofit that many of our audience may know called Dress for Success,
Mm,
and, creating clothes or giving access to women, who are entering the job market, that are transitioning and overcoming some challenges, and having the wardrobe and the clothing to go out and go through a job interview. That's empowering, and being able to also, I think of programs where I've worked where, it's shoes for children. It's really empowering to have shoes that fit the child's foot, not shoes that are 2 or 3 sizes too big, you know? And so thinking about that too, and
mm,
how clothing and shoes can empower the individual and make them feel they have the platform, um, and in a way, it is an item that can contribute to a change in someone as well. So, I think connecting it to our work and our conversations around nonprofit missions is really, I think it really is incredible how certain items really can help transform lives and experiences, and through educational, academic, as well as professional endeavors. Shoes and clothing can empower the individual, and also be inspiring, and especially if it's sustainable materials or you're a nonprofit focused on that,
mm,
working in an environment where your colleagues are wearing sustainable materials. That's also a conscious effort also to carry forward a mission too into your surroundings.
mm. I really like that because I started thinking about when you were saying what you were saying, sometimes being intentional, right? To recognize the shoes that you're wearing right now, whatever you are doing out there, audience, whatever shoes you're wearing, feel the sole of your shoes right now. Think about for a second maybe why you bought those shoes. How does it feel on you right now? What does it do for you right now? What does it do for you when you're wearing that?
Mhm.
It could be absolutely nothing, or maybe it does give you a feeling, a way of motivating. I remember watching my friends as we would go running together, and they're putting on their shoes and putting on those running shoes. You start mentally preparing yourself for what is coming next,
Definitely.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
shoes will do, clothes, shoes, items like that will do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's incredible how, I've worked years ago with this nonprofit that was trying to get more kids, particularly kids who don't have access to athletic shoes, to participate. So it was like whole body wellness and health, and getting physical activity to help address childhood obesity, as well as the power of exercise in one's mental health, as well as physical health, and just supporting programs to make sure that every kid that walks onto that soccer field, or that track and field, or the basketball gymnasium, that they have shoes that enable them to experience that sport or that activity. And I think that's it's also a great example of how those kind of items can transform, not just an individual, but a team of kids too. So, yeah,
That's right. And I love that you started talking about mental health, and that's one of the directions we want to go down now,
definitely.
and setting boundaries because that's part of mental health as
Boundaries, definitely. Let's talk about that.
let's talk about that. But the bigger picture of all of this is that shoes does give us confidence. It helps us set boundaries as well. It's
Mhm.
something that we have to remember. So you're going to always hear folks in the audience that we will always talk a little bit about shoes and what you're wearing today, why you're wearing it, and what does it do for you today. So okay, let's switch and go over to mental health and boundaries. When I think about boundaries, it's Saturday, and that makes me so
Yeah.
happy for many reasons, especially when I don't have any plans in place. I can just get up and do whatever I want. We keep hearing this at work. We need to set better boundaries. There are some people who do not believe in work life balance, whereas some other people believe in it. Now, for those who do not believe in work life balance, it was interesting. I was talking to a colleague. He believed there's just no such thing as work life balance. It's like you do work and then you go home and
Oh, that's terrible to hear.
yes. And I was trying to understand what he was. I think what he was really saying is that you probably have to do work until you feel that this work has been accomplished before you feel that you can free your mind up and feel relaxed. I think that's what he was really yet in that going through the
Yeah.
conversation. And I do
Yeah.
understand that because I think to myself, when I feel content is when I know I've accomplished something. I don't have to worry about it. This project is done. So maybe that's what he meant. I don't know. But going down this line again, boundaries. Tell me, and I'll ask you more specific questions as you and I go back and forth. But
Oh, sure, definitely.
tell me, what does boundaries mean to you? First, related to work.
Yeah. I have adopted actually many years and people who've worked with me life work balance. I think in our field, we bring our work home. Everybody does. Um, you know, where you're taking a shower and you've got, a huge major gift plan or strategy or something coming up and you come up with a brilliant idea. I think if you adopt a life work balance, I think you have a better sense of what boundaries are, and a better sense of boundaries in terms of like not allowing that stress and that work creep into your personal time. I think organizations need to adopt that, particularly recognizing um, employers do not own you. And I'm really glad you brought this up because I have seen and heard, employers will almost go after people and say, "Oh, I see you're doing consulting on the side or you're doing this and that." And it's like the world has changed. Someone can have a second job if they want to. If their hobby is to continue to do X, Y, and Z, and it ends up being like they're making earrings or they're selling earrings on Etsy or whatever, I think that's totally fine. I mean, it creates a creative process. So their outlet is that. And I think employers, not all, but some I've seen and heard, especially some really amazing articles I've read where people have been encountered by their HR programs. And, it's like they're like almost like we own you, we own every hour of you and every time of you. And that's where when the employer is overstepping the boundaries. And I think it's really challenging because your boundaries, your time is your personal time. You are your own person, and your ability to professionally execute the job that is given to you and being successful in that, you should feel proud in that. And so by setting the boundaries that you're able to say, you know what, my workday is done. I was successful in executing that and moving forward. Now I want to transition and work on my own personal interests or my personal hobbies. And so making that transition and setting those boundaries I think are key and vital. I just feel that there are a lot of employers that almost force employees to feel like their personal time is not theirs, as if the employee is now, you know, when they sign up for a job, they no longer have personal time. And so I think it's really challenging to find boundary and um, separation between employers' expectations and employees, especially if you're, what is it, non exempt employee you
Hmm.
know, the idea of 60, 80 hours a week,
Yeah.
that actually I think there's labor laws that prevent that from happening, because you're not compensated hourly for that time. And how is that, violating is there a violation of that? And so how do you identify that too? Because some people, I think in our culture, in American culture, we take pride, I work 75 hours this week. And that's not healthy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you explain to me what you think the definition of boundaries and how is it exploited?
And I want to jump in that in 1 second, but I want to ask you one question. Do you think what you just mentioned, though, has that changed between the pre-pandemic versus now? Do you think more people are aware of like, I need to take more time for myself? Hey, leadership, this is the set work, and then from leadership point of view, do you think they now get it? But I'm just curious. Do you think things have changed, or is it the same? Or
I think some employers, major nonprofits, and some organizations have responded and are listening, and they see it because people and we'll talk about this too, is burnout. People are leaving and they're burnt out. And so I think those organizations that have seen larger exits from people, and their transition in leaving their employer, I think some of those employers are responding to that and trying to solve for. for that. So I do see, but I don't know if people who choose to leave for whatever reason, if they are given a chance to provide a thorough exit interview or explain clearly to the employer what the challenges have been. And so I don't know if there's I don't know if there's enough organizations that are hearing that, listening, and solving for that problem, because I still see a lot of articles, posts on LinkedIn where people are telling horror stories, of my employer
Mm,
makes me feel X, Y, and Z. So I don't know if it's happening. I think for-profit entities, I think they're a different space, because
mm,
theirs is about profit and stock performance. So those challenges and decisions,
yeah.
I think, might be different for the nonprofit space. And we also function in we're scrappy for a reason. And it's like, no, we shouldn't be scrappy for a reason. We shouldn't overwork people either. And we can't have one person doing six people's jobs. But I think it has
Yeah.
not changed fast enough from what I've seen. At least the pandemic hasn't pushed
Okay.
that many to really change their cultures around that. What do you see?
Yeah. So yeah, so I see maybe a slightly different thing. I believe there's more awareness of what we should be doing, what
Mhm.
we can do. I'm gonna put a little bit more responsibilities on the employee, in the sense of, with this new awareness, employee, tell me what you want. What, as an employee, I should be saying now to my leaderships, talking about boundaries, right? And I still don't feel people are doing that enough. Is it because of fear? Is it because they're putting pressure on themselves? I don't know. But I do feel there is a shift, and this is a time for us to talk about it. And so, what is happening? Why are those talks not happening? I think to myself also, some people, how do you define boundaries? How do you define mental health? And I'm not talking about the official statements from a mental health expert, because I keep asking myself, when someone goes, I want a mental health day versus a sick day, what does that mean? Is it physical sickness? But isn't mental health also physical sickness as well?
Yeah, it manifests in so many ways physically.
Well, then why is
Yeah.
those two things still separate in many cases? So going back to what you mentioned about boundaries, I think of boundaries in different ways. And I'll just want to go over some things I thought about when I think about boundaries. Is it that my days from 8 to 5, and then at 5 o'clock I shut down? Is it that I don't work on the weekends? Is it that I make sure I take my lunch hour or whatever the lunch is and take breaks? Do I have the ability to do that? So one of the things I noticed that some people put their earphones on, and as I was reading articles about what does that mean, for some people it means that when I have my earphones on, that means I should not be bothered. When I have my door closed, it means I should not be bothered. Yet I've seen people will walk up to the door and wave their hands, or wave their hands in front of someone who has their earphones on. Now, some people use the earphones to work. They need quiet space, or maybe music or something, whatever they're doing to work. So that's not even defined about what the earphones truly mean, or your door being closed.
Yeah.
I wonder if boundaries is getting up and out of the office. If you're in an office environment, get out of the office. Don't sit and have your lunch in the office, because you're not setting proper boundaries for yourself then. If you're going to sit and work over lunch, I put that responsibilities on that person that's doing it now. Now, some people can argue and would say, but if that person's overwhelmed, overworked, they may not have that chance to do it.
Yeah.
If that's going to always be the argument, then you're going to be working, beyond 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock.
Yeah. Well, I think boundaries also lead to burnout, you know?
Yeah. Yes.
And, I just wanted to lift up Tom, I looked up the true definition of burnout, and particularly burnout in the nonprofit, sector, because we work with people, externally and internally, and, in the community and the constituents, organizations serve. So burnout not only is a huge problem, but statistically in, October 2021, there was a study that showed over 30% of nonprofit employees identified that they were recently experiencing burnout, or in the process of on the verge of experiencing burnout. And another 20% um, state that they function with burnout but still show up to work. And what happens with
Yep.
that is it says that when you see a colleague in that state, some of the symptoms this study shows is that you're working with people who are forgetting things. They're fatigued. They are not able to multitask. No one should be multitasking, but they're losing their enjoyment. The tone of their emails, tone of their communications may seem off, and they feel pessimistic. And they also have a disconnect with the work that they're doing. So those are some symptoms that a colleague could notice in another person. And I think when you start to see a colleague also going through that, um, I think that's a time for us to reach out to each other. We don't do enough in building the human connection. We work in nonprofits. We're talking about and working in missions and advancing the human condition. And so I think as colleagues, if you see someone or experiencing someone, whether you're on site with them or virtual team, especially as a manager or leader, you should really pick up on that and reach out to that person, ask them how they're doing. Because if they're feeling so overwhelmed, and burnout is a series of chronic stress and overstress over a prolonged period of time, and it affects the social, emotional, and physical health of an individual. And so I think we also don't, we're talking about boundaries too at work. We also don't carve out time for employees and colleagues to connect with each other, specifically to support each other when we notice someone needs a little help. So that's something I wanted to bring up too.
I think you're right in those. Obviously, I mean, I believe, when I think about research, I totally go with research. I believe in it. It's science based. There's the one thing I think we have to be careful about is how. I was in a meeting the other day and we were talking about embarrassment. Today, people are still embarrassed
Yeah.
of admitting that I am not able to do this. I'm burning
Yes.
out.
They're embarrassed. That's a great point.
They're embarrassed about it. So it's almost like, how do we make it the norm?
This is such a great conversation, but you'll have to tune in to the next episode for the conclusion. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Because We've Been in Your Shoes.
Join us next time as we share, advocate, and highlight experiences and ideals from nonprofit colleagues, leaders, and champions.
Subscribe to Because We've Been in Your Shoes podcast and be the first to hear our new episodes introducing new topics and guest speakers. Remember, nonprofit friends, you're not alone because we've been in your shoes.